Tim Andrews, founder and MD of the ID Register, Dan Copley, Managing Partner of FinTech for Blenheim Chalcot, and Henry Freeman, Strategic Advisor for Guernsey Finance. Now, one of the reasons for me hosting today's panel is that I chair the FinTech Oversight Group, which was established last year in 2021 to drive forward the key areas of a FinTech blueprint for Guernsey, which is an integral part of Guernsey's digital framework published by Digital Guernsey last year. The aim of the framework is to provide strategic direction and practical coordination for the bailiwick's digital policy for the current political term. And the FinTech Oversight Group sits within the digital framework and brings together representatives from the states, the key agencies of Locate Guernsey, Guernsey Finance, and the Digital Greenhouse, as well as appointed representative ambassadors from industry. And we work with Blenheim Chalcot to support and accelerate the aims and objectives of the FinTech Blueprint and Action Plan. And that's just to set a bit of context for who we are. So before we start, let's get down to basics. FinTech is simply financial technology or digital finance. And it has obviously two constituent parts, fin and tech. Now, I think if you look at Guernsey, it's fair to say that from a fin perspective, we have an abundance of talented financial services professionals. Tech resource, on the other hand, is a lot more scarce. So there needs to be a marriage of skills between the fin and the tech. And not just that, there needs to be a marriage of people and the technologies themselves. So we've got some real challenges in the islands in terms of how we deal with some of those things. And part of today is going to be looking at things like the skills and the demographic on the island. So I think it's fair to say, as I mentioned, we have outstanding financial skills on the island, and we are going to touch in a minute on a poll around some of the resources and challenges that we have. So demographic projections published by the States of Guernsey in December pointed to a substantial multi-decade shortage of labour as the working population was forecast to decline over the next few decades. And indeed, at that time, IOD Chairman Wendy Dorey quoted that rising house prices and a shortage of housing supply, Brexit repercussions, and a continued reduction in the number of economically active workers are going to have some real skills crises for Guernsey and add to the woes. And remember, this is not just us, this is a global phenomenon. So if we go to the first poll, Ben, if you could bring that up. So how many participants have open positions and have remained unfilled for more than 6 months? Let's give you a couple of minutes to answer that. And I know certainly in my business, it's not just the actual recruiting. Actually, the physical movement of people once they've accepted a role has been taking a phenomenal length of time. And actually, a lot of that's not just from Guernsey, that is UK immigration, etc. So there's some real challenges there. And whilst COVID has taught us that there's an element of remote working can work very well, and there are lower cost, cheaper jurisdictions, etc. I think what Guernsey needs to do is get that balance right. We can't afford to become an expensive clerical processing centre. So just before we go to the panel, you know, if we just think in a competitive arbitrage world, what can Guernsey do to maintain pace and competitiveness now and in the future? How do we future-proof the island? And clearly tech needs to be part of that solution, but how can we weave our financial businesses and our skills in that sector to enable our service delivery to be aided by technology? And how can Guernsey PLC create the necessary infrastructure and ecosystem that's needed for businesses to thrive? So I'm going to turn first of all to Henry Freeman. So Henry was educated on the island and he went away and he's worked in a number of jurisdictions, primarily in London, where he's held a range of very high profile positions, and he's also had his own fintech business. So he's returned to the island and he has a number of different roles. And one of those is as a strategic advisor to Guernsey Finance. So Henry, from your insights from being in London and now returning to Guernsey and in your role with Guernsey Finance, what are your views on the island's strengths and perhaps some of the threats that it faces as we look at sort of fintech and more widely around future-proofing the island?
Thanks, Linda, and thank you for asking me to participate on the panel. I think, number one, the biggest strength we've got is a very well-established, well-regulated and globally respected financial services industry here in Guernsey. The industry that we've got obviously covers, as many people will know, insurance, fund management and fund administration, pensions and private wealth, as well as, banking and all the ancillary sort of parts of the industry, including law, accountancy and advisory services, etc. So, that number one puts us at an incredible sort of pole position compared to other areas, other jurisdictions that want to grow a fintech industry or a fintech hub, or even just a hub for startups. The insights that we can get from the industry that we've got here already to understand the challenges that are faced, not just sort of within our own businesses here on the island, but also our clients' businesses, because our clients are completely global. They are spread across the world, and that is, again, very unique for such a small jurisdiction. We have that incredible insight into what the challenges are. And if you know what the challenges are, then that's when we can start to solve them with technology and looking forward. So that is the key strength that we've got. In terms of threats or weaknesses, if we're going down that SWOT analysis chart, I guess the biggest issue, and you've already touched on it, Linda, it's something that we are not alone in, is demographics and resourcing. On the demographic side, we do have an aging demographic. And obviously that puts it weighs on the resource issue for staffing. You mentioned already, our raison d'etre here is finance and financial expertise and experience. But as you say, we don't have as many tech oriented people, tech savvy people. That is changing. New generations do come through, but I think you're absolutely right. We need to bring that through ourselves. We need to help that happen. And for me personally, I think that is just easing the population control. Maybe we need to see our population grow, and that will help both on the aging demographic issue. I also sit on the state's investment board here, which is sort of the sovereign wealth funds and pension funds for Guernsey. And, just looking on that pension side, we do need a solution to take the onus off the central pot, which is finite. So opening up population, bringing more people in, attracting more people that have grown up here, that have been educated here and have had that investment in them at that early stage, like me, and like so many other people that have returned to the island. It's a beautiful place and it's got an incredible draw. So, that key strengths, the industry that we've got here, and the insights that gives, key threats or weaknesses, absolutely resourcing and demographics. Linda, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I know.
It's that old
You'd think after all this time I'd be a little bit better. No. Thank you very much, Henry. I think it's really good insights there. And then, so Dan, we're going to turn to Dan Copley. Now, Dan's a really has a very interesting background. Until 2014, he was managing director at Google for UK and Ireland. And more recently, he leads the fintech portfolio for the Blenheim Chalcot group. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Blenheim Chalcot, they are a long-established London venture builder, and one of their investment businesses is Agilicis, which have taken over the digital infrastructure for the States of Guernsey. And they are working really closely with us on the fintech oversight group in terms of helping some financial enablers for the island. So effectively plugging Guernsey in to the UK and wider in terms of some of the opportunities. So Dan, given your insights from both Google and from Blenheim Chalcot, what do you think Guernsey can do to assist with fostering both innovation and dealing with the tech and other skills gaps that we've just talked about?
Yeah, so again, thanks for inviting me on. I really appreciate having this forum. I think it's important to realise that innovation is the core to everything we're talking about today. And most innovation happens inside existing companies. So clearly we're keen and excited about the potential for startups, but the vast majority of innovation on the island is going to happen inside existing companies. Sometimes this leads to new startup companies being spun out. Sometimes it leads to employees leaving to start their own thing. But mostly it just leads, if done well, to more dynamic, growing and sustainable companies within the sectors that already have some strength. So actually, I wouldn't mind asking a little poll and ask the audience, if we can put the poll up, who thinks their current employer does a good job at fostering innovation within the company? Be interesting to see what people are thinking here. So do I get to see the answer? Okay, so that's pretty encouraging. Actually, that's a higher percentage of yeses than I typically get when I ask that question at conferences and events. So that's really encouraging. And obviously it's a foundation for good stuff to happen. So we can close that panel now so I don't have to look through it. So what I thought would be useful now is to talk about some of the characteristics of Google and some of the best clients we work with and some of the startups we work with today that helps to foster even greater levels of innovation so that the people leading organizations on the island can do a bit of a self-inventory and see whether there's more that it could be doing that could be helpful in driving that kind of innovation agenda. First, I'd say is, do you have a mission which fires people up? And missions that fire people up tend to be about what you do for your end customers and for society and the community you serve as a whole, rather than just pure financial metrics about how you're going to improve your ROI or your profit growth or whatever. And you think about a mission like organizing the world's information and making it universally useful and accessible is a kind of thing which people can get their heads around how their personal innovation can contribute to that outcome. And so that's really helpful. Next idea is giving people a level of autonomy that allows them to do stuff outside of what's directly demanded of them by their boss or their team goals, because the greatest innovation typically comes from people spotting challenges or opportunities that are affecting their ability to work efficiently or affecting their customers that they're serving directly, and giving them a bit of space to find solutions to those things. Obviously, if you're going to give them space to do that, you have to have some tolerance for failure, allowing people to make sensible, well-intentioned mistakes that teach the organization something. And obviously, you need that to be wrapped in an infrastructure where those learnings are captured and make the whole organization smarter, but that the individual that tried something smart that didn't work doesn't get punished for it. Next, you've got to have an organization that sees data as the critical input to any fundamental decisions that the organization takes. And so I see two kinds of cultures in organizations that I work with. One, which is the data-driven culture, where, particularly in this digital, electronic, technology-driven age, you can pretty much find data fairly cheaply and easily to inform any major decision you want to make, if that's the way you think and work as a company. The other model is the hippo company, which is the highest paid person's opinion. And you just look at the most senior person and say, what's the answer? And a culture that empowers people to challenge the hippo with the data, make smarter decisions, and innovates better. That data needs to be shared openly, and you need an overall openness as an organization, an openness such that everybody in the company knows the broad objectives of the business, how it's doing and where it's going, rather than having very kind of secretive, siloed understanding of their narrow role. Because again, only in the context of understanding the broadest objectives can you have the broadest thinking that's going to innovate and find new solutions. Next thing is partnerships. Does your organization embrace working with outside experts? And those could be experts on the island or overseas in the UK or elsewhere, but recognizing that the technological capabilities, the data, the advanced thinking is more likely to exist outside your organization than inside, and you're more likely to grow and develop if you've got a process for embracing that. Lastly, do you have the willingness to cannibalize your existing business, even if it's relatively high margin, if it's built upon outdated ways of working? Because the more modern ways of working, if you adopt them, they may be more efficient and lower cost, but also lower revenue and possibly lower margin. But if you don't adopt them, somebody else will, and they'll steal the business that you currently have today. So, gone through those very quickly, but I think it's probably quite helpful for the organizations that are represented by the attendees today to think about where are we weak and strong against each of those things. How would you answer the poll that we had earlier against each of those different dimensions, and maybe go back to your organization to see what you can improve upon. And then going to the specifics of fintech, obviously you need a blend of skills in financial services and tech, as we discussed earlier. The island's rich in the former, less rich in the latter. So companies here should be looking to partner with global tech leaders, hiring in CTOs and CIOs from the outside, using talent from around the UK and around the world, be open to flexible working, to relocations, etc. And then those leaders will help to upskill and attract technical talent throughout the organizations. And then that will create the foundation for innovation within the business, for ideas that develop into potential spin-out opportunities for startups on the island. And, in some cases, and you may not welcome this as business leaders, it may lead people to think, actually, I can do something really cool and exciting outside and go and start something up. But I think that shouldn't be seen as a failure. I think we should all be very proud if we foster the kind of talent that goes off and sets something else up themselves.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. And we'll certainly pick up on a couple of those themes in a minute. But that segues really neatly into our third panelist, Tim Andrews, who is the founder of the ID Register. So Tim's interest in fintech started when he was at IPAS, where he actually developed and created a fintech offering that then subsequently spun out. So very much in the coming from within business that Dan talked about. So Tim, very much I'll pose the question to you, is to tell us about your experience of establishing the ID Register amidst this backdrop, and tell us about your journey and some of the challenges and key factors in your success and your incredibly successful business now.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. Hello, everybody. And if you were starting to think that any of that was a bit too theoretical and that it can't actually really happen here in Guernsey, well, despite being clearly a Scottish person, I'm very much here to tell you that, yes, it can. Great ideas can come from anywhere, even small islands. perhaps especially small islands. And the ID register is very much, I would hope, a good example of that. We are very much, our idea is really very simple. We allow investors to onboard once, to provide their KYC information, their tax information, and their securities law information once across all of their portfolio. And that's an idea that, to be quite honest, hundreds, maybe thousands of people in the funds sector especially have had over many years. The ID register actually came about because of a change in legislation that affected Guernsey funds as well as those in other jurisdictions. FATCA CRS, where we had to identify whether investors were American. And instead of sending out a form and asking people to fill it in multiple times, we just simply asked them to complete the information once. And we realized that was quite a good idea. So it was very much an organic offshoot of an already successful business in Guernsey. At that point, I was working for IPES, Fund Administration, which was set up originally in 1998 by Connie Hellier and Peter Gilson. And I'd had the benefit of seeing that business move from initial founder ownership through a couple of cycles of private equity and then on to acquisition by Apex Fund Services. And to Linda's point, I think some of the ingredients that have enabled us to spin out from Apex, which we did in September 2020, and subsequently enjoy a reasonable degree of success around the international market, are that, first of all, as I said, this was a business developed with knowledge of the market that we serve. Technology can solve lots of different things, but sometimes you have to know how to apply it, and you have to know how it blends with service to really meet the needs of the clients that you're trying to support. I think our ability to understand the investors and the fund managers in the private fund market was really key. The fact also that our idea, although it comes from a small island, it applies globally, means that there's a much wider applicability, and that has fostered a lot faster growth than it might have done if we were only focused on one particular geographical area. It also happens to bring growth and jobs into the island from elsewhere, rather than just recycling within the island. So it increases the size of the pie for everybody. Again, to Dan's point from earlier on, one of the benefits of spinning out from an existing company is that when we did so, we had an existing client base. So therefore we had some people on day one who were paying our bills. And it's interesting that if you go back to the founding of IPES in 1998 by Connie and Peter, they had likewise some founding clients who paid their bills. I think that's one of the reasons why our existing finance sector is really ripe to launch new stuff, providing that we can create the conditions helpful for people to take the risk of shifting from comfortably receiving a paycheck every month to looking at your bank account balance and thinking, oh my God, is someone actually going to pay me enough revenue this month to cover my wage bill? So the examples of people who have gone down this road before and who show that it can be done relatively straightforwardly right here in Guernsey is really important, and also the ability to take a risk, and that's maybe a segue into maybe some of the challenges that we've faced. I think in the first instance, we shouldn't underestimate the scariness of shifting from getting your money arriving in the bank account every month to actually being responsible for yourself. And that's somewhere where perhaps some additional help can be given in order to support greater growth for the island overall. It's also very helpful to have the example of someone and the help of someone who has done this before. And I made all sorts of mistakes in spinning out of Apex and spinning the ID register out. And I was very fortunate to have the support of not only a well-known family office in Guernsey who have helped to provide some of the capital, but also our chairman, who also helped to try and keep me on the straight and narrow and avoid some of the worst pitfalls of the process. And so that mentorship to some extent is important. And Guernsey has supplies of both locally invested capital, providers of capital. I'm thinking of our backer, John Moulton, Guy Hands, both of whom we've seen investing in local businesses here in Guernsey. You've got examples also, White Star Capital, Raw Capital as well. Guernsey is not short of capital and not short of experienced people who can help young entrepreneurs move to the outside. I think perhaps one of the other critical ingredients is the willingness of the employer to support people spinning out. A lot of organisations in Guernsey are now, like Apex, large international organisations of whom Guernsey is one jurisdiction amongst many. And full credit to my former employer that they saw the benefit in letting us spin out and grow, rather than trying to keep very much internal and perhaps stifle the growth inside. And I think that if done well, can have a strong benefit, obviously, to the entrepreneur, but also to the employer, who can perhaps benefit through both an improvement to their own business operationally or commercially, but also the growth and value of any equity stake that they retain in the spin-out business. So it is very much about working together on a very practical basis to increase the size of the pie for Guernsey overall.
Great, thank you, Tim. That's been really interesting, and we'll pick up on a couple of other things you mentioned later. But I just want to go back to Dan. So we've talked about working together and working collaboratively, and I guess Dan, you mentioned about firing people up, and being in a business like Blenheim Chalcot and being part of a business that is helping ventures and taking risks to help ventures sort of get off the ground. What are some of the, where do you see some of the benefits that, say, the businesses in Guernsey, whether it's B2B or B2C, where do you see some of the low-hanging fruit, I guess, for business innovation in Guernsey? Because I know a lot of our businesses currently deliver what I would call the end-to-end. They do everything themselves. What do you see as some of the opportunities?
We've got a lot of very well-regarded, globally relevant businesses in Guernsey that are processing client documents, money in various ways, which inevitably are going to be modernized and automated and digitized more and more over the years to come. And the more that happens, the more it becomes possible for those activities to become spun out services that can be supplied globally, very much like in Tim's example. So I think the low-hanging fruit there is to encourage people within those organizations, either with their internal tech resource if they have it, or with outside partners, to investigate processes which are repeatedly done with a level of inefficiency currently because of the manual activities required, to work out ways of improving those using the latest technologies. And particularly I'm thinking about the opportunity for machine learning type automation. And if you can find a way to do that for your current company, and you do it in a smart way such that it can be agnostic to who the customer is, then you may be able to find other on-island clients and then other off-island and global clients for it, either as a service from within the company or as something that can be spun out, just like Tim's business was. So I think that's probably the low-hanging fruit area. And if you like to extend the analogy, the ladder you might need to reach that fruit is more of a connection to the technical capability, which is going to partner with the fin expertise we have on island, and some of the infrastructure organisations on the island can maybe play a stronger role in helping to foster that kind of connectivity for everyone's benefit.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, because I think, Tim, I know we've talked a lot, and you're saying it's not a tool. This is a weaving of tech and people, because I think a lot of people I speak to are worried that they're going to throw away all their people and just have robots and tools. And we're saying it's absolutely not. Did you just want to give a bit of a sort of a outline of how, first of all, your phenomenal growth and number of people, alongside the fact that it's a blending of tech and, as we talked about earlier, someone that knows how to, the knowledge of the market that they serve, which I think is a really key point. Did you want to just give a bit of a, because I think a lot of people are concerned that there'll be criticism that they're going to slash staff numbers as opposed to utilise the staff that they currently have better.
Yeah, absolutely. The key factor behind the ID Register's success is that we are a genuine blend of people and technology, and both are dependent on the other. So when we spun out, we had one developer and a total of 15 people. Today, 18 months later, our revenue has grown by 470%, and we are now 60 people. I suppose to some extent, unfortunately, from Guernsey's perspective, a lot of that 60 people, a lot of those 60 people are outside of Guernsey, and very simply that is because we cannot find enough people with the right skills and the right experience here on island. And we are very much open, just in case there is anyone watching who'd like to come and work for the ID Register, apply now. After that shameless plug, the benefit of the ID Register for our clients, fundamentally, we're asking private equity fund managers in the main to trust us with their investor relationships. And that requires a real level of trust in our ability to support investors as humans, to answer their questions, and then to review the information that they provide us. And the technology enables that, because it allows us to structure that activity in a way that if we were only a people business, would be a lot harder. So all of the structuring of our activity, the performance of our activity is entirely web-based, but the delivery of our service to clients, fundamentally answering questions and reviewing information, is delivered by our people. So I think that there are kind of a small number of lessons that come out of that. The first is that this business is in Guernsey because I live here. No other reason apart from that. And so therefore attracting people and developing people that we already have who have got good ideas and drive to get something off the ground is really the magic ingredient. And it is making that process of moving from employee to founder, owner, entrepreneur, I'm still getting used to the titles, easier and to some extent a little safer than it maybe was for Steve Jobs decades ago. The second is that we don't need to attract loads of developers to Guernsey. Of all the skill sets that are available around the world, developer skills are perhaps some of the most portable between jurisdictions, and quite often Guernsey we have this false perception that Guernsey cannot be a hub of fintech because developers don't live here. Well, we are a live example of the opposite. We now have a full fat tech team. Our tech team now numbers 24 people. So a third of my people are employed to develop my technology. 2/3 of my people are employed to deliver the service to our clients. And the reason why we do that is because we understand the market and we understand what our clients want. And it's that knowledge that Guernsey has provided. So we have a lot of good ingredients that can improve the finance sector that we have today without having to import a whole load of people that we don't otherwise have naturally on the island. We need to make better use of the people that we do.
Linda, can I just jump on and add a point to one of Tim's comments? There's a natural fear amongst the Finn people on Ireland, perhaps, that if you add tech, then it makes things more efficient and jobs go away. The absolute opposite is true. If you don't add tech, then the jobs become doable more efficiently somewhere else and the jobs go away. And you retain the jobs being done more efficiently here and grow the number of customers that you can serve and protect the jobs. And that's the way to ensuring kind of continuity of the strength of the sector.
Yeah, and I think you're bang on there, Dan. And we've seen a lot of attrition of business. It gets to a point when once you start to outsource sufficiently, that sometimes that business actually goes away permanently, as opposed to saying the control and hub is here, and we will take bits of delivery that is done either through tech or whatever means, but possibly not on island, or on island, but with technologies that are developed somewhere else. So Henry, just coming to you, with your multiple hats on, one being with the strategic advisor for Guernsey Finance, but also with your knowledge of the financial services businesses, both here and your fintech business that you started out. What do you think Guernsey could do better to create that ecosystem or that infrastructure to help foster some of the things we've heard about today?
Well, I completely agree with both Tim and Dan. We don't necessarily need to bring lots of developers to the island. Guernsey thrives on providing the best possible client service, and that's always what set our financial services industry apart. And that is very much at the centre of whatever we do in terms of innovation and fintech. It's worth also sort of thinking about where Guernsey does come from, because we do come from a background, a pedigree of great innovation, financial innovation. It is perhaps no surprise that that the formation of cell companies or protected cell companies started right here in Guernsey. The first captive insurance company was 100 years ago. So we have always used sort of company structures and structuring investments or entities. We've always been very, very innovative in that approach. I think when we come to look at how we use technology in processes, again, we've actually always been sort of ahead of the curve in certain areas. Think back to the late 80s, early 90s, when actually Guernsey came out, because we had grown a fund administration industry here out of sort of what we started out with, banking and other financial services that were globally applicable. There was an early starter of a technology company that provided the software to financial services, fund administration. And it wasn't just Guernsey fund administrators or trust companies that they were providing that technology solution to. It was across multiple jurisdictions, and that business ultimately got sold very successfully. I think it was actually a spin out from a very sort of established Guernsey business, which was now called the Blue Diamond Group. And so Guernsey has always had this sort of entrepreneurial flair, and I think so long as we keep nurturing that, we keep enabling young people and indeed older people as well to continue having great ideas, we can continue to move forward. A hub, an ecosystem where ideas and new businesses are nurtured should always be at the center of what we do. And again, something that I said right at the start, and I think Tim and Dan have both completely echoed, is this concept that we do have the building blocks. We've got the businesses that operate here on the ground, and we've got those businesses all have international client bases, and it's understanding the challenges that both the businesses here operating and their clients have, that we can come with solutions. It always starts with what's the challenge? How can we solve a problem? And from there, we can grow new businesses. In terms of helping to grow those businesses, and whether they're spin outs or simply an employee decides to go it alone, which is a scary thing to do. Exactly as Tim says, actually entrepreneurs, often they're known as risk takers. The really, really successful ones try to minimize those risks as far as possible. So starting their business with an initial client base that they're has already bought into the concept, shows that actually it's that proof of concept. There is a potential business there. If we can build an ecosystem here in Guernsey with engaged industry, plus with mentors, with people that have done it before, again, outside of financial services, Guernsey again has a huge pedigree in entrepreneurship and growing globally known businesses. I mean, these are Specsavers glasses. We all take health span vitamins, etc., and they're all great Guernsey businesses. It's Mother's Day coming up, and I'll do a quick plug for businesses that started here in that postal cards industry, taking advantages of opportunities where Guernsey can provide a service, whether it's Moonpig or Funky Pigeon or any number of others that have headquartered themselves or have based operations out here in Guernsey. We punch well above our weight. And so long as we get behind every entrepreneur, every business that is based here, every business that comes to set up an office here as well, they are the ones that do employ people. It may not be the developers, because as exactly as been said before, we can work with this great thing that's we're all staring into right now. We can work remotely with people that feel just as connected as if we were in the same room. It's always nice to be actually physically in the same room. And I think it's that servicing side, it's the people side that's where it really comes through. And that again is actually the higher margin, the higher with my States investment hat on. That's where the Guernsey industry can employ more people and can redeploy people. We need to upskill and do bring in some amazing people into the island to nurture and foster greater ambition and aspiration amongst our own workforce here. It's not about robots taking jobs, etc. It's about using ourselves in the best way possible.
No, absolutely, Henry. And just what if we just pause for a minute there and have, if we have a quick poll around what we think, just while we're talking about innovation. I know we've heard a lot about innovation, but what people currently see as the barriers to innovation on the island, because like we've heard from today, Guernsey has been at the forefront of some fantastic innovation. But going forward, what do you see as the inhibitors or barriers? Pick as many as you want. Right, if we have a quick look at the results. Interesting. Actually, I think the apathy, lack of ambition, was something that we have previously touched on, actually. And I think Tim actually mentioned, what would make someone move from a nice guaranteed paycheck to risk. And I know, Henry, you just mentioned mitigating and managing those risks, but the idea about having this cornerstone client or a cornerstone investor, I think if we could delve into that a little bit more, because obviously the skills and the high costs are definitely there. And I think we need to come back onto things like incentives that Guernsey can provide. But if we just touch on perhaps some of the ideas about how we foster, I guess, if we come to you, Tim, some of the things around how you spun out of iPeers and how you had all that support from Connie and the team in terms of helping deal with something that was already there and their support for you to do what you did. If you just want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so certainly very grateful to the original founders of iPeers for the example. Although I've got to say that when it came 20 years later, over 20 years later, for me to actually spin out of what was by that point Apex, I felt decidedly at sea and not ready and not really knowing what I should do and who I should go to, despite having worked in the private equity industry for 15 years. I would like to see a program, plan, support path for similar entrepreneurs who have perhaps spent a little bit of time in their industry, whether that be trust or captive insurance or banking or fund. The kind of principal pillars of Guernsey industry to both provide mentorship, access to locally interested capital, a guide as with some worked examples, if you will, as to how it can be done for real, and perhaps a degree of initial marketing or a corporate structure whereby entrepreneurs could make that step with a little bit more in a more structured way, a less risky way for them, a way that has the demonstrable backing of a group of locally based employers who not only who see spinning out not as a threat to their business, but as an opportunity to grow value and also to make the best use of the people that they have today in their business. Much better to keep a stake in somebody who's going to work night and day to make something a success than to see such a person just disappear and go and do something for someone else and perhaps someplace else. And I would challenge local employers around the island. Who would not want to be part? Who would stand up and say, "Actually, I'm not interested in being part of a scheme to support entrepreneurship in the local community?" Some of these things need a bit of a catalyst, and each individual employer is unlikely to make that step by themselves. There's always lots of reasons not to. I was perhaps a marginally difficult person. It was kind of time for me to go, and I had the ability to do so. It would be so wonderful to have some of the large fund companies, the large banks, the large captive insurance, the large trust companies to proactively sign up and support a worked example, a scheme to smooth the path of the putative entrepreneur, someone who has got a grounding in the market that they serve, has spent enough time there to understand the problem that they're trying to solve, and is now ready to move on, get their hands around something, and then put in the extra effort to grow it. And certainly to the extent that the ID Register can sign up to something like that here and locally, and perhaps be an example, a worked example for others, very much in progress, I would definitely be a founder member.
I think that's really interesting, Linda. If I can just jump in there, I think these sorts of formalised hubs. I was a founding member of a London-based hub called Innovate Finance. It was actually backed initially by government, and I think our first meeting was in some office, in Portcullis House or something around Westminster, which, just the politicians didn't get in the way, or the civil servants didn't get in the way. It was very much industry. It was a bunch of early stage fintechers. It was, founder of Revolut, Seeders, Crowdcube, TransferWise. It was a really fun and vibrant group to start with. And I think having the backing of government sort of putting the group together, as well as some very well-respected, well-trodden entrepreneurs themselves, and the backers and the different sort of stakeholders that they all have, bringing that to the party. It can be very, and I'm sure Tim will agree, being an entrepreneur, setting up a new business, even if you've got those initial clients, can be incredibly lonely. It's, the guys that you bring on with you, no one really will necessarily feel the pressure or the pressures that you're under, whether it's sort of ensuring that the tech or the platform or whatever the innovation is that you're bringing through is up to scratch, to ensure that you've got a pipeline of clients coming through, etc., to ensure that you're not going to run out of money and you're keeping, in touch with investors, etc., and potential investors. And so having that sort of ecosystem that is a support network as much as anything, but can also introduce the ambitious entrepreneurs to other like-minded people, or if you're on if you're looking for investment, etc. Tim is absolutely right. We are so lucky in this teeny weeny tiny small island to have some incredible investors, and we shouldn't forget that they came from outside of the island, and we have so much to thank for the people that actually come and base themselves here and get involved with the island. And we are incredibly lucky that actually Guernsey has a very vibrant community in that sense. An ecosystem. We can sort of look at putting something together. I should also say that GIFA, which I'm involved with, GIFA is the trade association for the investments and funds industry here on the island. We actually have an innovation and technology committee, a tech committee, and we've been looking at, I don't sit on that one, but the guys that are, Guernsey again is moving forward with crypto. I'm involved with a crypto group, an informal crypto group, and again, just having these conversations about these other areas, whether it's innovation, fintech, whatever, it's all important. Meeting people, talking to people, that's sort of where your ideas get challenged. And that can only be a good thing. It would be stupid going through life not being challenged, because your idea probably isn't necessarily valid for other people if you're not being challenged and tweaking it and making it relevant for the audience that you're trying to get to.
And Linda, just one build on what Tim and Henry have both said, which I completely agree with, is that one of the things that Blenheim Chalcot does to help our portfolio companies is we use our network to bring people who have been very senior in the relevant industries, who have often now retired or gone into a portfolio career, and plug them into those startups as mentors or advisors. And you talk about an aging population as a negative thing, but it's also a positive thing that you've probably got lots of people with amazing career histories, amazing experience, great connections that perhaps are not as fully absorbed in their careers as they were, and would love to get involved in something as exciting as helping a startup. But often it requires a little bit of lubrication to make those kind of connections work, which is what Blenheim Chalcot does for our portfolio, and perhaps Guernsey Finance or one of the other trade bodies there could do. And it's a lot of it is about sort of legitimizing it, putting a bit of a structure, a bit of a framework, bringing networks together. And if you made it almost a sort of an expectation of retiring finance people on the island, that they became part of this club of people who's got together to connect with each other and to help the startup organizations in the sector on the island, I think that could be very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right, Dan. And I was going to come on to you to talk about some of that kind of connecting, the linking in, and the kind of sparking and matchmaking that I know you're very passionate about. And you're talking about the sort of Bridge to Scotland and the kind of Entrepreneur First scheme. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So another organisation I do a little bit of work with is called Entrepreneur First, originally based out of London, but now in various places around the world. And their model is to recognise that businesses tend to get started when very entrepreneurial people come together to match typically business skills with technology skills around a problem space that they've got some experience in. And interestingly, during the pandemic, that process was done entirely remotely, with a very high degree of success of companies, founders meeting, forming ideas, developing and launching businesses, often without ever being in the same room. And so it just illustrates that the fact that we don't have deep tech resource on island shouldn't be a barrier for great business people on island to connect with tech resources through other entrepreneurs, through agencies, whatever, outside, and come up with business plans and execute against them. But again, there may be some role, just like Entrepreneur First does, by creating a program and putting some structure and some curriculum and some mentorship around those entrepreneurs coming together, there could be some sort of program that could be developed to support and accelerate that kind of connectivity.
Absolutely. So that kind of as neatly goes into the next poll, which, Ben, if you could bring up the next poll, which is around with a willingness to allow staff to participate in such a scheme. Okay, if we could see the results of that poll. Yay! That's absolutely fantastic to see. I mean, I think when we were planning for this session, one of the things that we were hoping to get out of this was seeing the importance of giving time and chance to create something that creates value, very much what we've heard from all of the panelists today, and certainly looking at how we connect and how we plug in everybody together, because I think that is one of the hardest things, is knowing where to go. So, you know, someone's got an idea, how do we bring it all together, almost like in a sandbox type environment. And I don't know, I'll just throw it open to the panel, just mindful we've got sort of 15 minutes more, and then we've got allow some time for questions. But in terms of how we bring, I guess, the agency, so obviously for this fintech group, is trying to bring, and this is the beauty of it, we've got people from all the agencies, we've got the states, we've got Agilicis, which is part of Blenheim Chalcot, and then you've got ambassadors from business. How can we best leverage that group to best effect to make some of these things happen? And it's going to take all of us to either do it ourselves or give time and chance to our people to do that. So I don't know, Henry or Tim, if you wanted to speak, I guess, from your experience as to where perhaps you've seen that done well, notwithstanding what you're already talking about, Tim.
Do you want me to go first?
You go, Henry. To be honest, from my perspective, I did this all myself without any help, and that is really the wrong answer. That's one of the reasons why I'm very keen that the ingredients that we have in Guernsey, which perhaps need a little bit of yeast added to them to some degree, can now actually be brought together and grow. But it does perhaps need a bit of a real life catalyst, and not just a theoretical centrally driven approach.
I think that's right. I think probably, Tim, most businesses, although we'd love our employers to properly get behind us and, you know, enable us to work on these great sort of moonshot ideas on their time, on their clock, they probably actually want you doing the job that you're employed to do, and they don't necessarily appreciate that, yeah, this moonshot could be fantastic for them financially as well. But I think that's going to be a key hurdle to get over, and that is ultimately down to the individual who sees the opportunity or sees the solution. And maybe it's not just individuals; it is teams as well that come together and find solutions. I think, you know, if we can get the companies behind this, then fantastic. And it might well be in a slightly different format rather than employer backing employee. It might be, a initiative like Innovate Finance or whatever it is, that is backed by government and by industry, and whether that's sort of similar to how Guernsey Finance works. I think the issue again is resource. Guernsey Finance's remit is to promote the island's finance industry. And we're given a budget by the states and industry. So it's a joint venture between the states and industry in order to do that job. And it's, we're all sort of we all find it difficult to ensure that we're able to put the oomph into sort of the side projects whilst ensuring that we remain focused on what we're employed to do. And I guess that's the Guernsey Finance remit, is employed to promote externally the finance industry that we have here. Having said that, we are absolutely supportive, and hence why I'm here to as an advisor, sort of to help push as much entrepreneurial spirit and as much backing into building a fintech and an innovative ecosystem for new businesses to establish. I think everyone is very aware that across the fund services, the private wealth services, etc., insurance, there has been huge amounts of consolidation globally, and Guernsey has been part of that consolidation. We've seen businesses consolidated, and we've been the consolidator in a number of areas. But in order to ensure that we remain relevant and ensure that we can continue to grow businesses, employing people, and creating GDP for the island, we need to ensure that we're also coming up with ideas. And there was that I thought a slightly shocking statistic in one of the polls earlier on apathy. We need to build amongst our population, amongst the people that live and work here. We need to back this island. We need to be backers of every single idea and single business, and we need to be proud of the industries that we've built here, be they financial services or otherwise. We do punch well above our weight, and we really need to ensure that we remain relevant, and that is bringing and building new businesses. As I say, both that can help financial services, whether it's financial services innovate, or fintech businesses, or outside of financial services as well. But we do have an amazing opportunity given the existing and established financial industry that we've got here.
I think the challenge, though, is the signposts and the markers. I mean, the people on this call today, and there's certain people, we're probably preaching to a number of the converted. It's how we get that messaging out. So we've got Guernsey Finance Supernotes, we've got Locate, who are trying to bring people to the island who might be the next Doug and Mary Perkins. We've got the Digital Greenhouse that already does mentoring and linking up and helping with skills and providing forums for people to meet and to foster that innovation and those ideas. So we have got bits of the ingredients. It's how we bring it together and how we signpost it. If you're that next bright young thing sitting in the business with a great idea, how do we let these people know, or our people know, that these opportunities exist? It's the plugging and the sparking. I guess a question to everybody is, how do we better publicise the opportunities that exist to plug into some of these opportunities, be it through Blenheim Chalcot, be it through digital Guernsey, or through Guernsey Finance?
Yeah, the last thing that this island needs is another talk shop. We've got enough of that already. And it's really important that this initiative is led by people who have got real live experience, preferably current live experience of actually doing this stuff, and having all the pressures and the ups and the downs and the challenges and the people telling you that you can't do it. And it'll never work, and it'll especially never work here in Guernsey, and so on and so forth. it's important that it's not just it would be really nice if we did all this stuff, but preferably it's someone else's job. So let me give a shout out to somebody who is most definitely not on this call. Darren Stevens, your island needs you, and the Committee for Economic Development. Government ultimately here needs to hold the ring. It doesn't need to do it, doesn't need to put money into it necessarily. But government is the catalyst, and government gives credibility. It gives the forum for employers to come together without any kind of collaboration. And certainly under the current administration, without getting political at all, there does appear to have been a strong focus on improving the creativity and looking to solve issues, make the island better, and certainly in some of the interaction I've had with Committee for Economic Development and all the people involved, but particularly Mr. Stevens, who thinks very, very clearly about these things. I very much appreciated that, and I think that there is an opportunity here. This is not just another talk shop. This is an opportunity with real capital held by people who live here, real entrepreneurs who are actually doing this for real and who are invested in improving this island, and real employers who are servicing the principal pillars of the Guernsey finance sector to come together and provide a very clear worked example with a degree of support, perhaps from the Guernsey Sovereign Wealth Fund, although admittedly I did approach the Guernsey Sovereign Wealth Fund at an earlier stage, and it wasn't the right fit for me. So there is perhaps an importance for different sources of capital to come together in the island. Not everyone gets it right all the time, but a structured approach with government holding the ring, perhaps bringing together the work that has already been done by the digital greenhouse, the external promotion capabilities of Guernsey Finance. And Henry is right, Guernsey Finance is an external promotion agency. It's not an internal, let's innovate the local finance sector agency. But Committee for Economic Development, if there's anyone listening, come and tell me afterwards if you're interested or whether you think I'm wrong.
Absolutely, and I think the internal signposting within Guernsey is really important, and hopefully you would have seen in the chat that the Digital Greenhouse are running a number of programs, one with Blenheim Chalcot, looking at exactly this, how we plug in people with investors, with ideas, with agencies and connections on and off the island. And I think this is really, really important. It's us getting this message out to people locally, saying these opportunities do exist. The Digital Greenhouse is playing a great part in creating links into or connecting the dots, so to speak. So it's really about us getting the message out there and us as employers allowing our people to have the time and chance to innovate.
Lindsay, I just want to jump in there exactly as you were saying with Blenheim Chalcot, and I think it's unique again that Guernsey has this partnership with Dan and the team at Blenheim Chalcot, because they are helping us here on Guernsey. I have to a bit of a shout out to what my wife's up to. She's actually signed up to a digital marketing course that is put on by one of Blenheim Chalcot's sort of portfolio companies. Is it a Vactor? It starts with an A, Dan.
Avado. Avado.
That's it. And, they work with the likes of Google, et cetera, et cetera. And again, that's really unique that it's an open course for people from Guernsey to get involved with, upskilling. She's using it as she's on a couple of sort of charity boards and the Ladies College board, and she's also got her own business, and she's using what she's learning from this course across all the different sort of things that she's involved with across the community, and it's really valuable. We are so unique that we have these resources, and the digital greenhouse as well, obviously, as you've mentioned, Linda, that is a space to go to that can put people in touch with others. I agree completely, Tim. I'd like to follow up with you after this and sort of look at what could be done, and certainly with Darren and the team within ED and the civil service as well.
Yeah, so I'm just very mindful of time, as really appreciate everyone taking the time today. So panel, if I don't know if you've got any last comments before we go to questions, wrap it up in a couple of words. No.
I don't know if I'll get invited on a panel again, Linda. So for everyone watching, it's very nice to have met you.
And Dan, thank you so much for joining us. I know what a busy man you are, and thank you to Blenheim Chalcot for all the support. That's certainly hosting us at the Scale Space when the FinTech Oversight Group went and had talks from the entrepreneurs that Blenheim Chalcot have fostered and supported. It was a complete eye-opener, and it showed us the power that Blenheim Chalcot can bring to the people of Guernsey, as we've just talked about, in terms of plugging in. And that's all part of Agilicis's link in with the financial transformation or the IT transformation for Guernsey. So this is something that Blenheim Chalcot and the states of Guernsey are committed to. So, as you say, a unique resource. So I don't know if panelists have any questions, whether they can put them in the chat, or whether we have the ability for them to speak or raise a hand. But please do post any questions. We'd love to hear from anybody.
Linda, just while you're waiting for the questions to come in, I was just thinking while the other panelists were speaking about how do you make the ambition of the island in this space more visible to people on Ireland and the outside world, and sometimes it's about having a kind of annual cadence of something which is a bit of an event that becomes kind of newsworthy. And I was wondering if there might be opportunity for the established businesses in the financial services space to come up with a kind of annual Guernsey FinTech Challenge, which is a hackathon that anybody around the world can participate in to solve a common problem, which might be around kind of KYC or document management or something which is an issue that is not company specific. And uniquely, the winning teams get invited, all expenses paid, trip to the island to meet their potential partners or customers for their solution, and get to see what an amazing place it might be to live if they chose to relocate there, or if they're happy where they live, at least build that connection and start a customer-supplier relationship. But that's the sort of thing that might, over time, could grow and could become a kind of media hook for trumpeting the story of FinTech in Guernsey.
I love it. No, that sounds absolutely brilliant. That's definitely something that we can put to the oversight group. Dan, thank you for that. Well, I can't see any other questions, but I guess what we'd like to do is, if you have any questions, please continue to post them. I think that Ben from the Digital Greenhouse can pick those up. If there's anything else, please direct any questions to the Digital Greenhouse, who have very kindly coordinated today's session. And as we've seen in the chat, there's a number of other sessions that are coming up, and we really strongly encourage you to spread the word. domestically, that these fantastic resources are at our fingertips, and the commitment from the agencies to try and bring what we already have together rather than creating anything more is absolutely brilliant. So hats off to as Tim said, Darren and the team, for everybody that's trying to foster greater collaboration across the public sector and the private sector, and of course to businesses on and off the island. So without further ado, I'll take the opportunity to say thank you very much to Henry, Tim and Dan. Thank you, Digital Greenhouse, and thank you to you all for participating today, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.